Welcome, welcome, welcome. What an exciting pleasure that I get to be here with you all and with Jenée, just giving a few moments for people to sort of come in. It takes some time. So if you're here, welcome. And as more folks come in, we will welcome you as well. Thank you so much for being here today. And in a moment, I'm going to share more of a full introduction of Jenée, but I just want to say, hi, Jenée.
Good morning.
Good morning. Jenée Johnson is our guest of honor, and I'm so excited to get to talk with you today. And we're going to be I'll just share a little bit of information and a little bit of introductions. So we are going to be doing an interview style conversation today with Jenée. And so please feel free as you go along to chat in any questions you have. And then we will kind of pause on the interview style between Jenée and myself, and around maybe 10 past the next hour, and have some good robust time for us to have questions from you all in the audience as well. And so just again, feel free to chat along those questions. And if you have any technical issues, Grace is here in the background supporting us. So please chat in any technical challenges to her as well. And before we get into more introductions, I also want to hear from you all about where is everyone calling in from. So please feel free to use your chat. And as folks are doing that, Jenée, where are you today?
I'm in Oakland, California.
Oh, I grew up in Oakland. Yay. Welcome, Jenée. And I'm in San Diego, California, so a little bit further south. And where are you all calling in from? Go ahead and feel free to click on the chat button and have the selection to hosts and panelists. Montreal, welcome, welcome. Far on the other coast where I imagine it's cold right now, very cold. And I know Grace is joining us from Austin, Texas today. It is wonderful from Switzerland. Good evening, Boston. Hi. Wilmington, North Carolina, welcome. So we have all over North America and international as well. Thank you so much for being here. And I have been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. My name is Lindsay Coogle. I'm the director of the Certified Teacher Community and Partnerships here at SIYLI. And I haven't had as much of a chance to interact with Jenée as some of my colleagues, which has been unfortunate in my eyes. So I'm really delighted to get to have this opportunity to chat with you. And I'll just share a little bit more about Jenée. I was reading your bio and just going, wow, what am I going to say? There's so many things. So I'll just introduce the highlights. But of course, so Jenée Johnson is first of all, a mindful movement builder and really a thought leader in the space for bringing mindfulness into organizations as it relates to the work at San Francisco Department of Public Health, where Jenée currently is. She is the founder also of the Right Within experience and is committed to the reclamation of humanity, joy, and well-being for people of African ancestry. Jenée leads this effort with bringing mindfulness into public health practices and does this through the trauma-informed systems lens with the San Francisco Department of Public Health. And her goal is to improve the organization's ability to manage change, stay resilient, inspire growth, and also to manage the day-to-day challenges of the work that comes up and become a mindful culture that leads and serves with compassion. And we have been fortunate to have Jenée in the SIYLI sphere for quite a while. Jenée, you've been a thought partner with us as to how, mindfulness can be really integrated into a culture, and specifically in our longstanding relationship with SFDPH. And you were one of our early certified teachers, and also serving as a very trusted and important member of our advisory board since 2018, I think, for a while. So we are so appreciative that you agreed to do the Changemaker Forum with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It is my pleasure, family. I'm glad to be here with you. I believe in the work and the mission of Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. From the time I was introduced to it, another certified teacher did her practicum with the program that I was directing under the Maternal Child Adolescent Health banner, the Black Infant Health Program, looking at health disparities in birth outcomes for Black women and their babies. And so I was most impressed then. And as my career took an arc, and I landed in trauma, even before that, I was a trauma trainer embedded in maternal child health. I sensed that there was something missing. And so the missing that I felt was mindfulness and the runway into emotional intelligence.
Well, tell me more about that. So my first question for you is to tell me about your kind of intro into mindfulness in your own practice and how it informs your life. And I'd love to hear, when you say that piece was missing, what that means to you, and how you kind of thought about what was missing, and how you see the work that you're doing as supported and conjoined with mindfulness.
Yes. So mindfulness for me began in my own spiritual practice. I have a robust Christ-centered faith, and contemplation, prayer, quiet sitting, being still is a part of that practice. And I had already begun to do reading and integrating more of the work of Thich Nhat Hanh into my own life. So when Search Inside Yourself certified teacher Toby Scruggs, who I know outside of our work, said, "Can I do my practicum with your organization?" I was like, "Definitely, please do." I had at that time a relatively small staff. It was going to be really intimate, and she's a really creative teacher. And so she brought the Search Inside Yourself program to us. And we did the 2-day. And it was life-changing, girl. To just see all of the pieces of the heart and the science. And for me, spirit and science are connected. They are not actually separate. They reinforce one another. And also to know that Search Inside Yourself is curated for a workforce, which enables us to be able to talk about these important human activities and possibilities in the workforce, where church and state, of course, are separate, but where the work gets done by human beings who have hearts and souls, right? So that was my runway into mindfulness.
Beautiful, thank you. And it sounds like, right, it's this combination of, right, people in the community that are connecting us to what's important to them about mindfulness, and then how it really lands for us internally. And I love that you called out the what's the word I'm looking for? The dynamism, the synchronicity between, right, the spiritual and the science, right? How we don't have to ignore one or the other, but we can actually kind of integrate, right? Science as a process of inquiry, and spirituality as a process of inquiry.
Absolutely. It's, I think what helps is that we're not teaching religion. We're not teaching a dogma. Yes. we are teaching about awareness and consciousness and being able to connect to others. And nothing gets done in any organization outside of relationships. So this is part of what we, the opportunity that I envisioned with Search Inside Yourself and the trauma-informed systems. Trauma-informed systems is looking at how do we as an organization disrupt and dismantle our practices that cause trauma, that dysregulate and cause harm. How do we better understand trauma and stress, improve our cultural humility and responsiveness, build safety and stability, increase collaboration, increase our ability to manage conflict and still stay connected? And so everything in the Search Inside Yourself program enables the individual to grapple with this, even though we're not calling it those things that I just mentioned in our program, there's a ... they connect. And so what I felt was missing as I was training our trauma curriculum, I said, oh my goodness, this is a wonderful framework. But what is missing is mindfulness, is this ability to be non-judgmental in the midst of triggering situations, to hold with kindness and curiosity this awareness of what's happening in mind, body, and surroundings. And understanding that this is a skill and you can learn it. And if we're going to be successful with these trauma principles in action, we need to have this, we need to teach the skills.
Beautiful. Love it. Yes. And so I'm curious. I really feel in what you're saying, I really feel the vision that you have and some of your own passion, a lot of your passion coming through. And I'm curious, as you have integrated some of the ideas and the practices and things into things like your trauma systems trainings, and of course the Search Inside Yourself and other mindfulness programming at SFDPH, what has been some of the effect? What do you see with your colleagues, with those humans that we're talking about that we're all working together? What has it looked like since you've started this work, and what have you witnessed?
Yes. Thank you for that. I think I should start with what is actually happening.
Yeah.
What has happened.
Yes.
And what is happening. So once I had this revelation that we should have mindfulness, and that I had been exposed to what I thought was the right program for our work, I went to the trauma leader, the director of the trauma-informed systems, who wore a couple of hats, but high enough in the hierarchy of the organization. And I said, I think something's missing. And what I think is missing is mindfulness. And he said, Jenée, you're right. So this is the first piece in the success of this movement in DPH, is I have a revelation. Now, how do I help move it through the organization? It's to find an ally who is in leadership high enough to have the authority, power, if you will, to say yes and make that yes happen. To then say, yes, go for it. And then I can move ahead. So then I, in turn, called Search Inside Yourself and spoke to one of your former colleagues. And I was like, hey, this is what's up. I read your vision and your mission statement. And this is how you can fulfill on your mission. It's mutually beneficial. And then he did the legwork, and that led to the white tabletop meeting with the Search Inside Yourself folks and a couple of people from the Department of Public Health. And the leader in Department of Public Health, he came with a few dollars. So this is the other thing, how things get funded in public health. Woo! And when does that process start? It just so happened that he had grant money that was from outside of the city's general fund for Department of Public Health that he had full control over. See, that does not always happen. So with that grant money, he came to the table, and we solidified a relationship and a cooperative agreement. Search Inside Yourself would give us a 2-for-1. They would train 2 people to become certified teachers for the price of 1. And there was some, I don't remember all the details, but some agreement around how some people could come to a 2-day training. And they were people who were already in what we call champions in the early adopter trauma-informed systems movement. So they came to a 2-day Search Inside Yourself. Actually, it was my first 2-day of my teacher training. They came to that. And myself and the woman who is now the director of trauma, because that director, he left the organization, she and I were trained to teach. So we did the long, it's a rigorous journey to become a Search Inside Yourself certified teacher. We embarked upon that journey, successfully completed it, and then we began to teach, offer the program. I don't like to call it a class because it's much bigger than that. It's a program. And went to another leader and said, how do we scale this? Can we get your support? And that leader said, let it build its own case. So that means basically no. That was a nice way of saying no. But I won't stop you, right, from seeing how you generate. And what we were able to generate is doing the Search Inside Yourself 2-day and sometimes 1-day program on in community spaces. We went to the Meta Fund. They had a community room that was free of charge. So we got people off of the campuses of the Department of Public Health. We were able to do it at LinkedIn, another partner now. We did it within units and teams, a couple of clinics. And so the 2 of us trained 200 people.
Oh, wow.
And what we began to realize about letting it build its own case is that in an organization of 9,000, we were going to need more than 2 teachers. And that's when I went to Rich, the beautiful CEO. Hi, Rich. At SIY. And I said, we'd love to do this, but Search Inside Yourself is at a place where they were discontinuing the teacher program. This is pre-COVID. I almost said pre-9/11 because I feel like very like that. And I'm a New Yorker, right? So they collide together in my brain. But he said, hold on, just Search Inside Yourself was getting ready to do their last one for a while, and it was going to be in Portugal. So there was not going to be this way of, infusing people from DPH into that. But he said, hold on. And in the background, he leaned into a partnership that SIY had with Katali Foundation. And fast forward then, Katali Foundation through SIY funded our first teacher training. So then we graduated, we recruited and did the whole process of applications, and the review process. SIY has a very rigorous and thoughtful, it's a thoughtful review process, looking at applications, asking people to submit videos, and we selected the first cohort of people who represented people from inside of our organization and some of our community partners, because my thinking was to have a diverse group and to do some cross-pollination, that it was good for us as an organization to have energy and voices of people that we are partnering with, but are not working inside of DPH every day. Because remember, we're on this pathway to move from being trauma organized to trauma informed to truly being a healing organization. And we needed to have other people in there in the mix. And that turned out to be an extraordinary group of diverse, ethnically, just diversity of all kinds. And people up and down, people who are health workers, people who are therapists, people who have PhDs, so we had a very, and as well as the ethnic diversity. And so we graduated our first cohort in May, I want to say, and have just finished the application, the recruitment and application and selection process for the second cohort. And the second cohort, we will be able to pay for because we had savings because of COVID that we were able to forward quickly into this, into our SIY fund. And then we'll be able to earmark, in the budget early, the remainder. So girl, we're on a layaway plan. What do you call it? When we were growing up in New York, we had layaway. You lay it away, you put something down, and you kept paying on it.
Yep.
So that's what we're doing. So that I just want to give you the scope of that. This is what the program at DPH looks like, how it got started, what are some of the pieces in terms of, because our goal is everyone who works in the Department of Public Health must take our what we call TIS, Trauma Informed Systems 101 training. It's a 3.5-hour half-day training on understanding stress and trauma. And inside of that, we do mention mindfulness. We talk about 6 habits of happiness. This is cultivated at UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center. And one of the habits of happiness, guess what, is mindfulness. So we introduce mindfulness lightly. We talk about the breath as the place of activating the body's calming response, the parasympathetic nervous system. So we talk about the neural pathways a little bit in the trauma work. And now what we are saying is, after you take the basic TIS 101, 101B, if you will, is search inside yourself. So we're moving people right from TIS 101 into SIY, which is of course why we have to have more teachers. And now what we're also doing is going back and capturing those who already took TIS and bringing them in. And we're also saying to people, if you don't want to go that route and you have a team, a unit, a division, and you just want to have mindfulness training, we will come in and offer that to you. So, that's what we're up to.
Yeah. I mean, amazing. I'm going along with you in the story, and just the momentum that you're building it's incredible. And it's a testament to your leadership, your vision, and the persistence, the kind of long game, if you like, right? The long-term goals, and really keeping in mind what are we trying to accomplish here, and let's just keep taking steps in that direction. And I'm like, I have two different directions that I could go in right now. I'm curious about the culture at SFDPH and what you envision for that going into the future. And then I'll just say specifically, right, you're making this powerful connection between mindfulness and search inside yourself, and trauma-informed systems, and also about undoing systems of systemic racism. And so speak about that. Tell me how, I mean, oh, that's a big topic. So, but I'm curious about, like, one, the through line that you see through that, and what you hope for in a culture like SFDPH, how all those pieces can tie together, and how you envision that future. Yes.
So let me say, Lindsay, what I'm endeavoring to do is create a scaffold, if you will. I watch a lot of HGTV and, yes. The studs and the putting together the framework. I'm putting together a framework. But as in any good framework, we must have some agility in it, and different rooms and different ways of getting to the thing. And so that's what I mentioned. We have the TIS 101, and then we're gonna want to move people right into this SIY program. Then we have people who say, well, I just need this in my department right now. But we also have this thing that we offer every Wednesday, Mindful Moment, where people can come into a Zoom room and be led by me primarily, or one of the new teachers, in 15 to 20 minutes of a mindfulness practice. And now we're downloading Dr. Amishi Jha's 12 minutes. So we'd sit quiet for 12 minutes and then we'll talk, or whatever, but get that 12 minutes of quiet sitting in. And that often serves as a way for people to stick their toe in the water, if you will. And what we're recognizing in this very moment is we have been at the front line of COVID command. So many of my colleagues did not work at home. They worked every single day during COVID. Even a couple of the certified teachers who I don't even know how they made it through certification and worked COVID command. A couple of them had to actually even go out on leave afterwards. It was so debilitating.
Tell me a little bit about what they're doing. I'd love to hear about, like, what their work is, what it looks like.
The COVID command center, depending on what you did, one person was a nurse. So she had to go out into the streets of San Francisco to service the most vulnerable in our city population. People living on the street, people in a single room occupancy, hotels, etc. If you've been to the Tenderloin at any time recently, I went to a clinic and they said to me, Jenée, we're gonna meet you. I'm like, I'm from New York, honey, you don't need to meet me. I can go anywhere. Well, when I got there to the garage that they told me, I totally got why they wanted to meet me. The level of hurt and devastation on the street is it's unfathomable. So this person was going through that day after day. So that's one example. Or working at a command center where they're trying to work with populations that don't speak English. So the assignments and tasks were varied. And I say that to say that. I say that to say it was traumatizing. So we have the entire collective, our whole society is feeling this pressure. And some more than others, depending on who you are and where you are in the society. But then you have an organization whose job it is to stay open, keep the lights on, and keep a certain group of people working in hospitals and clinics, and servicing, we do a lot other direct service to other populations to keep that through line going in the midst of shelter in place. So I say all that to say that we're now in a state of recovery, just as we're building a mindfulness program. But lo and behold, these skills are the skills that we need. And lo and behold, we have now more teachers. So what we are doing is asking our teachers to, one, teach classes and respond to the requests that we're getting. So this very clinic that I spoke about in the Tenderloin, who I took through the SIY program before the pandemic, had people die. So now they're coming back to me and saying, can you come back? So this is the cycle of the work that's happening right now. So to your question of what we're hoping to, one, embrace mindfulness, emotional intelligence, educate, share the content, build the skills, have people embody it, and then embed it in the culture of the system. So currently, you asked about the culture is still a traumatized system. That's the culture. With these islands and oases of excellence and vision, and that's what we are moving ahead to do.
I'm just letting this land, the culture.
Oh, it's a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, and it makes sense, given what you're describing, right? The culture is still a traumatized system. And I think just feeling I've been fortunate enough to, see the bios of the people who have graduated from the last round of the teacher training, and imagining them moving through a day-to-day that looks like what you describe, or something else. But just imagining moving through the day-to-day and knowing the kind of weight of that trauma that they have to see, acknowledge, work with, but still do the job. And just the resilience that each individual has to bring, I can imagine, must bring in that situation.
Yes. And I appreciate that word. We use the word resilience in our trauma work also, but that's what we're trying to do. We're endeavoring to, as an organization, heal, to promote a culture of learning, and to show staff that their well-being is important and valued. That we want to have a common policies and procedures written in plain language and available for everyone, that actually creates collaboration and empowerment, helping people to build connections and teams inside departments, because as I said at the beginning, nothing happens outside of relationships. And one of the things of a traumatized system that happens is that the emphasis is on productivity, produce, versus being on cultivating collective care. And that's what we are endeavoring to shift. We also want to cross-train our staff and have succession plans. So for when there are staffing shortages or changes. See, these are the things that traumatize an organization that's big and that is on demand to deliver. You have staffing shortages, and that's just a mess. It creates a lot of pressure, like maintaining consistency in practice. And so that when changes are needed, to make sure that staff and clients are provided with adequate notice. So when there's changes and there's inadequate notice, because you're trying to move something that's that big, you got to have these runways. And so these are some of the things that I believe, right, when I said what is missing is what Search Inside Yourself offers us. It's emotional intelligence. These are the essential human competencies, the self-awareness, the self-management, the deep practices of listening, the cooperation and managing conflict. These are the things that we need individually and organizationally. So the things that are happening to the individual are the same things that are happening in the organization. And so with the what SIY provides us is an experience, and that's the other thing. Mindfulness is not something you talk about. Mindfulness is something that you do and become. So this is what is happening. We're putting together a framework and we're linking trauma principles with the principles of mindfulness. It's and the practices, principles and practices of mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and having them married together. It's inside of that we are hoping people change. The big another aha for me was in this last application round, the people that applied to be teachers. Doctors, epidemiologists, as well as frontline workers. So the message is getting out. People in compliance and human resources. So this is how you begin to, it's like, when you pour the nice hot fudge over the ice cream and what happens, it just starts to seep through. So this is what's happening. We've just offered this thing up here, but it's seeping through and reaching it out. Now it's starting to reach out into the other corners of the organization. And people say, oh, wait a minute, I want that. And I think because part of the yes to this is not just that you could have the SIY badge, which is lovely to wear, but it's so that you can bring this to your corner of the organization, that you can use your power, your influence to forward the program, to forward the thinking and the practices behind the program. So that's where we are with that.
Wow, what a beautiful and again, deeply sort of, seeping in, engaged process at every step of the way. I'm just curious because all these elements of emotional intelligence are so important. And if the leaders, managers, directors, the doctors, the frontline workers, the nurses, the social workers, if all of them are engaged in deep listening into the system, what do you think they're hearing?
Ooh, they're hearing what we have been hearing, that there's trauma, that there's stress, that there's inequity, and that inequity is replicated from the top down, that that sometimes we talk about it, but we don't be about it, which is the case for many organizations. The tragedy of Charles Floyd happened, and all these statements came out, and who is really ready and able to speak to that? Inside, to do one is to do the honest diagnosis of your own organization, to say, this is how we are perpetuating this. Often what people do is they want to fly in at top, and they want to just act like nothing has happened. And, oh, let's just do these top line improvements. Racial equity is not about an improvement. It's about a disruption and a killing off, if you will, of a systemic way of doing business and a lack of consciousness, and creating something absolutely different. And that's what people are often afraid of. And that's why I think mindfulness, emotional intelligence is so important, because it enables you to stand in the fire and the complexity, what we teach in SIY VUCA, the VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Mindfulness enables you to stand in that and not lose your mind.
We hope.
Not blow your top. It enables you to stand in that and hold that and be compassionate to yourself and to others. And then to look through the trauma lens. The trauma lens is not what is wrong, but what has happened.
Yeah.
And that's what fosters compassion. That question has us looking at strengths. That is the question that has us stay inside of creativity and acknowledging. Recently, the Association of the American APA, American Psychology Association, recently released quite a telling paper about how they have been guilty of perpetuating racism and inequity in their practice, in their frameworks, and they listed, and I think they are an example, a model of what an organization needs to do. You need to identify where you do harm first. That's why I actually changed my title. I'm not racial equity, I'm racial healing. The healing, in my mind, precedes the equity. You have to look at, where have I done harm? Where have I not valued diversity? Where have we pushed dominant culture traits of perfectionism, power hoarding, productivity over care, the written word being more important, only one way to learn. This is actually the way most organizations are set up, because it's a culture. It's a culture. It's a practice. And if you don't see it, you just say, well, there's nothing wrong with us. Look at what we produce. We get things, we can get it done. So we have to recognize that the production in our culture has been on, one, the backs of certain people. So there's been exploitation in the production. People have been exploited and the land has been exploited. So to me, the first step is to have the courage, and that's a heart issue, to look at what has been done. And then you engage and be in collaboration around, how do we recover? And most organizations are not doing that. They're not responding, they're reacting. Let's get this message out. Yes, let's call these people in. I mean, I'm speaking for a group that will go unnamed tomorrow. Very high level health organization, not in California. But it could be. And, we're having our pre-meetings. And they have already told me certain things I cannot say, I cannot talk about. So if we can't talk about it, how are you going to fix it? How are you going to be about being? Because it's not even about fixing, it's about being different if you can't even talk about it. It's the conversation we're having about proper historical reckoning. What are they calling it? Critical race theory. It's not a theory. First of all, critical race theory is something they studied in law school. We're talking about the proper reckoning of American history. And everyone was there, not just the people who were marginalized or victimized. They were marginalized and victimized by other people. So everybody needs to see themselves in it and be able to hold that without, once again, and our nervous systems have not been exercised and built and strengthened to be able to stand in those deep conversations without over personalizing it, without running out of the room, without, why are you still talking about that? Because they don't see the thread into the current practices and policies. So that's what we are facing, is we're facing an historical indoctrination of our own psyches, our own biases are weaved in, and they show up in how the organizations are designed. And people will often, they just don't want to change that. And we're dealing with a government organization. The level of rigidity, the level of flexibility is less flexible. And yet, look what we are doing. So my message is light the candle, honey. Light makes manifest darkness. You could see where it's dark, and light also dispels the darkness. So light the candle.
I'm hearing so in this, and just like, oh, just it's hitting my body in a particular way, and it's so, it feels really rich to hear you say it. And one of the things I'm hearing is how important this is, right? How important it is to be able to see, just to even see the cultural elements that are inherently, in the way that they are exercised out in the world, oppressive. You'll see that and then stand in the fire. I love that image, and how that's hard to do no matter what, and how mindfulness is so important in that, the ability to stand and observe with discernment, without judgment, and just see, even if it's painful, and even if it's whatever it is, just see it.
Yes, that's why I feel very encouraged about this, all of our teachers who are coming through, because they are building this ability to be observers, the meta attention, to pay attention to how we have been paying attention. And then with kindness and curiosity, bring that in. And kindness and curiosity does not mean lack of courage or that it has no teeth in it. It's kindness, curiosity, and confidence. Because over time, I built in myself, I feel, an ability to speak to any audience about this topic. Because I don't villainize. So that's off the table. And I don't victimize either. So I think that we are still growing and coming a long way. We have more and more scholarship around issues of race and bias, as well as scholarship around how the brain and the mind and the body work, and how we can put those two arenas together to forward healing and flourishing. Because, honey, I'm here to flourish. I don't know what other people are here to do. We're here to flourish. We're here to flourish. And the flourishing, no, it's not happening for everyone, but we are here to, wherever we find ourselves, to activate the best of our gifts, talents, and abilities and contribute. So that's where I found myself in the Department of Public Health, noticing something that needed to be addressed, speaking to it, finding the listening ear of a willing and also innovative leader. And little by little, and then it's not so little, actually, we are building something. And that's how it is. I want to encourage people who want to do this kind of thing in their organizations. It may not be our path, but there are principles in the path. There must be the revelation and understanding of how this can help. You speak it into listening ears and you build allies. And then little by little, you grow. You light candles, you set fires, along the way. And what I am finding is that people are doing this work. Human beings are coming to work every day, and they want better lives. People want better lives. People want to be happy. People want to be well. People want if they're in leadership, most people, they don't want to be the leader that's, the one everybody's talking about in the bathroom at that cooler. In their heart of hearts, they really don't want to be that person, They may not really understand how. And so I think one of the things that we're doing with SIY is creating a safe space for people to be on a path of their own self-discovery and then relate it to their work.
Yes. I love that. And flourish. And I just want to say we have a few more minutes. So if there are questions from the folks here, please feel free to chat them in, and we'd love to have Jenée speak to your question. But I just love what you named about flourishing, right? People want to be happy. They want to be well. They want to heal. They want to flourish. And and show what they've learned. And
yes. People want to heal. This is my experience all over. Human suffering is universal. People, you're riding next to somebody on the BART train or rapid transit system. You don't know their story. You don't know what people are going through. There is certainly there is an availability of certain amount of what we're calling privilege. But even in that category, people suffer. People are suffering. People are dealing with all kinds of things. And that's the piece about the compassion and the empathy and what we call the loving kindness, the just like me. That when people can make the connection that this is another person, another family, and I have a family, and what would I want for myself? I always did that in my work, especially with my work with pregnant women and new moms. Why San Francisco had one of the top Black infant health programs in the state. It's because I would have my staff go to the front door, and then we would walk in the front door and walk through our center and walk through with the eyes of a client. Is this the place? How would you feel coming to this space? Is this the space? And then we created a beautiful space. We blew up photographs. We have a tea bar, fresh fruit, so that we create what we would love to have for ourselves. And people and women loved it. So understanding that we're interconnected, we're interrelated, that we're not that different.
That's beautiful. I'm like, I want to see, it. And I just appreciate the invitation to it's not simple. So that's not what I'm trying to say, but this concept of, let me actually just remember to put myself in the shoes, in the place of whoever it is that I'm talking to, whoever it is that I'm interacting with. Let me just remember to imagine what their experience might feel like. even if I don't know, right? Just remembering to do that is such a key practice that.
Well, also, I cannot remember her name, but she was at the forefront of teaching about race and racism. And she did this experiment with children, brown-eyed, blue-eyed children in a room. And one day, one group was on top, and the next day, the next day they were on the bottom. And then she debriefed them and how did all this feel? And then she would also ask a very important question when she spoke to white audiences. Would any of you want to be Black? And not a one person said yes. And so we can tease that out about why. But ultimately, what she was saying is because you know that it's not an easy road in this country. And also, it may be indicating what you also think about, what you have learned about this group of people. And we have been entrained. I have a short story. I don't know if we have time for it, but.
We have about 1 minute before we have to wrap up.
Okay. So I was a kid playing with my friends. Little girl says, come to my house. And you always want to go in the house because that's where all the good toys are.
Yeah.
We get to the door. She says, Mom, can my friend come in? And her mom says, is she colored? Oh. And she says, yes. And she says, well, then she can't come in. And so in that moment, we both were being entrained. And so this is what has happened to us. The question of what has happened to us. We have been trained. And that's what we're endeavoring to unravel. And that's why mindfulness is important in this conversation.
Yes.
It helps you to look and to see, to be aware, and to develop enough distance to decide to shift, to make a shift, individually and organizationally.
Thank you, Jenée. Thank you so much for the whole conversation. I'm just really appreciating everything you have envisioned for DPH, for yourself, for the work that you're doing with Right Within. We are just so grateful to be in partnership with you all the time. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
And thank you to those who are here. Grace, I think we have something to share real quick to offer discounts to other programming. If you're interested, please note that there are Search Inside Yourself programs and other effective teaming and adaptive resilience. And then of course, Changemaker forums are forever free. For anything else that you would like to attend, you can use the change_maker code. So we just wanted to offer that. And please stay in touch. You can find us in all of these places down at the bottom. And we also have Jenée's website here shared in the chat. And it's JenéeJohnson.com. So you can remember it. And again, just thank you so much, Jenée, for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Have a great day, everybody.